Hi everyone, today we're going to make a colored particle trail for an animated geometry using Houdini. Let's go. Instead of working on a simple prop or object, instead I'm going to use a animated model, and Mixamo.com has a bunch of models and characters which you can mix and match to get interesting results. As you can see, there are a bunch of character models here. All of them are pretty cool, but we're going to stick with this export model just because the silhouette is much more simpler. And at the end of the day, we're rendering the particles, not the model. For the animation, as you can see in this animation tab, there are a whole bunch of animations here. But we're going to go for something more dynamic, more exciting, so maybe a dance of some sort. Maybe a breakdance. Let's go with breakdance. Yeah, this one seems pretty good. Alright, I can work with that. So I'm gonna download this 30 frames per second, that's fine. Skin this FBX, and let's head over to Houdini. Now that we're in Houdini, let's start making this work. First, we're going to import the FBX file that we downloaded, and it should appear here. There it is. It's going to play it out, see where it ends. So it ends at about frame 90. So I'm going to change my timeline to 90 frames, so it's easier to work with. And if you go inside this network for the breakdance, you see there's a whole bunch of joints and geometry. Instead of working in there, we're going to make a new geometry node. I'm going to name it particle denser. Going inside there, I'm going to put it down an object merge. I'm going to bring in the geometry from the other network. Beta surface and height other objects. As you can see, it's not complete because there are a couple different sets of geometry for this model. So the other one will be the joints. I'm going to merge those together, and it should create the whole geometry. There it is. Now that we have that, I'm going to put down a normal node. So make sure the normals are fine. That's where the particles will be generated. And normals will give us velocity that we can use for the particles. Alright, the normal, let's make a pop network. And going in the pop network, let's go back up here. Actually, we're gonna make a null node just to make it cleaner. Out dancer. Going in the pop network, we can, instead of using first context, we can change to parameter values and grab our object from outside. And we have our particles. Clear problem is that the particles seem to be black boxes, which can be fixed. That's because if you look at the attributes here, you can see that there's a sharp material path attribute because our geometry had a shader on it. So we're going to remove that. Then attribute delete. Choose material. And now we have our particles. So playing it out, we can see that the particles, they do activate, but they seem to be living for quite long. They just seem to be staying there as they are created, and we don't really want that. We want it to be more dynamic, more flashy. So instead, we're going to go inside our popnet and going to birth. As you can see here, life expectancy is set to 100 by default, which means each particle will live up to 100 seconds, and that's a bit too long because we have 90 frames in this animation and that's just a couple seconds long. So I'm going to change life expectancy to maybe 1 second. Life variance also, just to get a bit of randomness. Increase the particles to like 10,000 temporarily. Let's see, please. That's much better. We can clearly see the animation much more clearly here, but maybe they live a bit too long here still. So I'm gonna change this to half a second. That's a bit better. Yeah, that's fine. But instead of the particles appearing throughout the whole geometry, the whole body of this model, instead let's make it so that the particles only appear, only activate on certain parts of the body. You can do that using some sort of noise. So I'm going to make a point for here. When you go in, create noise node. Let's go with anti-alias noise. Connect the position noise. With this, you'll see there's a bit of noise on the surface of the geometry, and it's quite alright. Play it up, seems to be moving, the dancer is moving, but I feel that it might be a bit too chaotic at the moment, so I'm going to reduce the frequency to a bit, make it a bit blobbier. Be more distinct. It's fine. So if you play the pop net, you notice that it still appears in the whole geometry. That's because we haven't set the parameter for it to just for the points to just appear where the noise is. So the noise is using the color attribute of the geometry. So you gotta change the parameter, change the emission attribute to color, which is CD. And now particles should only appear where they need to. I think we can increase the amount of particles. 100,000. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, now we can maybe make the particles a bit more livelier. Right now they're sort of static whenever they are created. So I'm going to create a pop force in the particle network. Delete this much. And increase the amplitude, swirl size, and they seem to be swirling quite a bit. Swirl scale. Is that? Yeah, it's sort of like a wavy effect now. The particles don't seem to be sort of following the object. They just seem to be staying where they are. That's because we haven't really used the velocity of the object yet. So we're gonna, to use velocity, we need it to compute velocity. So I'm gonna put down a trail node. which has that velocity. Okay, that the particle seems to be flying everywhere. That's because it's using the normals. And this seems to be a bit more chaotic. So we might have to tone down our pop force a bit. So size. And we gotta put a drag inside just to contain this whole chaotic mess that we have. Now that's a bit better with the pop drag remote. Can probably increase the force a bit. Maybe I'll make another force just to make some variance in this whole thing. Increase the amplitude. It's a nice swirling effect. I just realized that the points don't seem to be starting where they should be. They seem to be scattering outside of the geometry from frame 1. We don't want that. That's because we haven't connected the normals to the velocity yet, which is just a quick fix. Go connect the normals to velocity, and it should start right where it should be. And yeah, that's much better. Now that we have our particles moving the way we want them to, let's add some color to this. So I'm going to add another point cloud connecting to the pop network. We'll put in a ramp parameter, and to make it a bit more interesting, we're gonna have the color change according to the age and the life cycle of each particle. So I'm going to put down a divide mode. Divide the age and the life. Put that in the input. Ramp out to color. Now if you label this as color, we go back up to the point warp. This color ramp should appear. Currently it's setting the setting is black and white, and against the color seems to be working. Let's change the color to something else. Let's start with white, maybe end with green. That would be nice. That's not bad. Or maybe I'll do a warmer color, maybe like a pink. I'll add another one in the middle, like a red. That's pretty good. At this point, I think we can increase the amount of particles we have. Back to my source. Currently it's at 100,000. And another 0 there, we get 1,000,000. And now we have something more exciting. A bit slow, but you can probably add more particles later on. That's not bad. But the particles might be staying there a bit too long, maybe. So I'm going to reduce the life half of that, like 2.5. We have this. Yeah, I think that's much better. Now that we have the particles, let's start rendering this thing. First I'm going to make a camera. Switch off the base geometry. Place the camera here. Perhaps I'll animate the camera a bit. Add some keyframes. Just a simple panning effect. That's pretty nice. Change my focal length. Should have done that before. Okay. Change the transform again. And that should be fine. And centralize it a bit. That's pretty good. Now to render this, let's first make a render node. Get rid of the mantra node. Frame range 1 to 19. Let's take a look. Maybe I'll do more dynamic pose. Check out how it looks like. That's not bad. Perhaps the colors are a bit too dull. So I'm going to go to back to the so I'm going to go back to the point warp that we made with the color. I'm going to add another multiply after the ramp. Multiply constant. And I'm going to multiply this a bit so it gets a bit brighter. Put it at 5. That's not bad. And right now the particles seem to be a bit flat, so they might need a shader. So I'm going to go to the material palette, add a constant shader. It's under utility. This, I'm gonna assign it to this geometry to render constant, and now it's a bit more brighter. See, it's a bit glowing a bit. Maybe it's a bit too bright, so I'm gonna reduce the multiplier a bit to 3. That's nice. So now to render this out, I'm gonna go to the render output, and since it's a movement based animation, I'm gonna add motion blur to this, and to get motion blur correct, you have to also activate it under the geometry, under sampling, add velocity blur, and it should blur out correctly. I'm gonna stop this, and I'll finally render it to, let me name it as particle dancer .f4.jpg. I'm gonna render that out. This is the final render. I took around 8 minutes to render this. It was a million particles, so the render will vary according to how much particles you're using and the resolution of your render, and if you add other stuff to it like lights and backgrounds and stuff, it will affect the length of render, but otherwise it's quite fast. This technique can be used for a whole bunch of stuff. Just adding particle trails to moving objects will help make it a bit more dynamic. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and there'll be more to come. See you.